Hiring is one of those things every business leader says is important, but very few say they enjoy. It's expensive, it is emotional, and when it goes wrong, it doesn't just cost money, it costs momentum, morale, and sometimes the entire culture of a company. Now, most founders I talk to don't say that we are bad at hiring. They say things like, the talent pool is broken, people don't want to work anymore. We just can't find the right fit. But think about this, listeners. What if the real issue isn't the people applying? What if it's how companies are hiring? Welcome back, listeners, to another interesting episode on the BizBlend podcast. I am Sana, as always, and today's conversation is exactly about that uncomfortable truth. My guest, John Pezoulas, is the co founder of Ready Set Exec and an executive search partner who's worked across sales, marketing, HR, and operations leadership. He has gone from bootstrapping a business with nothing in his pockets to building a firm with a 100% placement success rate and an average time to hire of just 39 days. And he has seen hiring from every angle, listeners. Temp staffing, executive search, P&L ownership, and leading teams of hundreds. And let me tell you, he's also father of three, including twins, which means he understands what real pressure, trade offs, and time constraints look like. So, today we are going to unpack why most companies hire wrong and what it actually takes to build a hiring system that works like a machine instead of a guessing game. So, John, welcome to BizBlend, and I'm really, really glad that we are going to have a conversation on this topic.
Yes, thank you for having me on the podcast, and appreciate the intro there.
I mean, uh, I mean, lots of very very surprising numbers. But before that, actually, I have two questions here, John. So to begin with, number one will be it's kind of an observation that when it comes to my own journey or what I've seen across the hiring universe per se, is the owners or the entire focus or the entire market of how to get hiring right is most of the times on the candidates, on the people who are going to apply. um, I don't know what's the exact reason, but I think that very few people they question or they try to understand why exactly the hiring is going wrong. Is it because of the human resource? Is it because of the approach? Is it because of the current talent pool? I mean, it kind of becomes a very, unfortunately, very bad blame game. So I'm very glad that you are bringing up this topic. You are doing the work here, and then there are definitely some very very exciting numbers to prove here, like 100% placement success rate, and then average time to hire 39 days. I mean that is phenomenal, but it's bold as well.
Yeah, so a lot to unpack there, right? So
Yeah.
I think everyone likes to point the finger at something else in terms of why hiring and recruiting is difficult. Candidates will blame the ATS system or the recruiters. The CEO will blame the recruiters or the candidates. The recruiter will say the CEO doesn't know what they want, and the candidates
Mm.
are not quality. Everyone's pointing the finger at each other. I think it can be a combination of things. It can be a lot of things, but in general, I think as the CEO of a business, you have to take the buck stops with you in terms of who is ultimately responsible for hiring and making sure that things are working correctly, right? Now, some CEOs just do not have the skill set of recruitment, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But it's about being self aware of their own capacity to do it, whether they've had success with it in the past, and whether they're competent to do that. Like you can't be good at everything in your business, and you don't need to be, right? That's the beauty of being able to hire others to support you. So I think for some companies, you can see where the CEO realizes, they're not experts in recruitment, and so they hire talent acquisition people internally. They grow their team. They use agencies. They're basically leveraging others to help bring in the talent they need for the companies that they're building. And part of that, I think, is some self-awareness in terms of their bias, because everybody has bias. It's from unconscious bias to confirmation biases. There's all these different biases out there. You could do a quick Google search and bring up, I think there's 20 plus different biases that people have in their day-to-day life, right? And it's impossible to completely remove bias from the recruitment process. But I think part of it is at least understanding and self-reflecting to say, what biases do we have as an organization or individuals, and how can we try to mitigate these as best as possible for better outcomes, right? You're never going to be perfect. We're always going to have preferences and so on, and biases that come into play. We're all human after all. But I think that is probably one of the first steps to better recruitment. Is stop playing the blame game and realizing, what part do we play in the recruitment process, right?
That's right. That's absolutely right, John. I absolutely agree with you. And um, I think companies often treat hiring like an emergency instead of a strategy, like, quick hiring. Like, we have to finish this within this month or within this week. Like, they wait until someone quits, then panic, then rush to fill a seat instead of solving a business problem. Um, and I think when hiring is rushed, the company ends up hiring for comfort instead of capability. And I think it can be uncomfortable for many leaders to admit, because it puts responsibility back on them instead of the market.
Yeah, and I think when you don't have a talent strategy and your everything is reactionary, for example, your salesperson left and oh my God, we need a new salesperson tomorrow. You don't take
Mhm.
the time to think strategically about your next hire. Are you hiring for the past? Or are you hiring for your future needs? Right? Are you hiring for legacy software, or are you hiring now for someone that can use AI? Right? Things have changed on the technology front. Things have changed in business, and so your job description from 10 years ago is not the same as today, and you probably need to adjust that. And if you're just rushing to just replace someone, you may not be taking the time to do a proper, talent assessment. What exactly skill sets do we need? What kind of person do we need now? Can we combine roles? Can we split roles? There's a lot of things to think about as your company grows. Your hiring needs when you're 50-person company is way different than when you're a 500-person company, right? And so all of that has to come into play in terms of developing a talent strategy. And if you're doing everything last minute, reactionary, and just rushing, yeah, you're gonna miss some of this development for, it's called organizational development, when you're actually planning out how you're gonna scale, who's next in line, succession planning. All these things are part of the talent strategy, and a lot of companies just they either don't have the expertise to do it,
Mhm.
or they're just, as I said, working reactionary. And when you're doing things reactionary like that, you're missing a lot of things that are, you're overlooking very important things. So that can be a problem.
Yeah, it can be problematic. It can be chaotic as well. Um, and let's move on to the 39-day system, John, because you have built a model with an average 39-day time to hire. To be honest, like, it's fast in executive search. I mean, um, like, we have notice periods, and in India, like, we have 90 days of notice period, 60 days of notice period. So let alone 39-day, it looks like unimaginable, like, completely. So what does this system actually look like in practice?
Yeah, so keeping in mind, in most North American companies, 2 weeks notice is the standard. So this is where we can get our 39-day average time to hire. Um, so keeping that in mind, I think with us, there's a couple things we do internally that can help us be very quick in terms of turnaround. So the first piece is, in a lot of agencies and a lot of recruitment companies, your average recruiter is working on multiple requisitions, sometimes over 10. I've heard of some companies putting up to 30 requisitions on one recruiter. So that's one thing. With us, we cap our team at 5, which means they have more time available for every single rec they're working on. They're able to give more attention, more time, more focus and concentration. And that's part of why we're able to hit 39 days. That definitely is a big part of it. The second thing is our process, right? We focus on a project management system in terms of how we recruit. Everything is a timeline in terms of deliverables for our internal team and our recruiters and our account managers. Um,
Mhm.
and the steps in our system ensure that there's quality control along the way. So if you like, I can go through our process. There's a 7-step process. I can go through that if you like.
Yes, please, John.
Sure. So first off, most calls, let's say most recruitment calls, the average recruiting company is going to have a kickoff call with their clients, right? This is just standard practice. With us, we separate this kickoff call into 2 separate meetings. The first meeting is discovery. We dive into the culture, the workplace, the work environment. What does success look like for the role at 90 days? What does it look like in a year from now, 3 years from now? Why would a gainfully person employed want to switch companies to come work for you?
Mhm.
What are the mandatory criteria for the candidate? What is a nice to have versus a must have? um,
Okay.
you know, the culture, the work environment of the company, and so on. So it's a very in-depth interview of the hiring team. We like to meet everybody who's a stakeholder. This is our discovery process. It lasts for around 90 minutes, could last longer. We really dig deep to really truly understand the business and the role itself. And we also ensure that the customer signs off on the mandatory criteria for the recruitment we're doing. So by having their sign off, they're agreeing that this is what the mandatory criteria is for the hire. And this way we have clear transparency between both parties in terms of this is what good looks like. This is what we want. Okay. Now, from that discovery meeting, we then go and create a hunt list. We go after both active and passive candidates, meaning that we do headhunt talent. We don't just post ads hoping someone will apply. We're going after the entire market of qualified individuals in the market. And we build our hunt list. And then we have our second call, which is our alignment call. This is the call that is crucial to the search quality. Because
Okay.
if you have poor quality candidates in the top of the pipeline, then at the bottom of the pipeline, you'll also have poor quality candidates.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
you need to have top quality coming in to have top quality coming out the bottom. It's a funnel, right? And so just like any sales funnel, you have to have the best quality. And so by having an alignment call, we're going to show sample profiles to the potential client. They're going to be able to see sample profiles and give us live feedback directly on each of these candidates. And this is a very good qualitative and quantitative exercise because we get a true understanding from them, their biases, what they like, what they don't like, their preferences, what good looks like to them, why it looks good to them, why this person doesn't look good to them, and why not. So this really gives us an understanding of exactly what the candidate profile should be like. And we can also challenge the customer as well. Well, why don't you like that person? What's wrong with them? Why don't,
Mm.
and hear from them what they have to say. So I think this is a crucial part. We call it the alignment call because it allows us to become aligned with their business and with their vision of the hire. And if we have an alignment, meaning that we present, let's say, 10 sample profiles, they say 8 out of 10 are good, then we know we have a good quality pool that we're working with, which means we have a higher chance of a positive outcome here. So if we don't have a good alignment from this call, we'll then do a second alignment call if needed with a new hunt list that we create for them.
Mhm.
And we'll keep doing this until we can have alignment. Usually we get it right in the first meeting. Sometimes we've had a second meeting if they're very picky. It's also about setting expectations in terms of, well, what's your budget for the role as well, right? Budget also matters in terms of the kind of candidates you can attract,
Yeah.
especially if you're trying to bring someone over from a competitor. They're already working. So why would you leave your job for less money? You have
So,
to be pretty competitive with pay to attract someone from a competitor that's actively working for them. So these are certain things that come up in discussion. We really take the time to align with the client. And from the alignment call, we guarantee them interviews within 2 weeks. And so we set the expectation. Our team has their orders. They have their hunt list that's been approved now by the client. We have the mandatory criteria been approved by the client. They're then engaging with these candidates. They're setting up interviews, and they're doing it, spending the majority of their time within those 2 weeks period. Usually within 2 weeks, we're able to get interviews for the clients. We present between 5 to 7 candidates. Each one's presented with a candidate portfolio, a full resume, but also a one pager on them in terms of why to hire them, the business impact they can bring, what their expectations are for salary, and so on, giving you that 360 view of the candidate.
yeah.
Um, and based on that, they'll see those candidate profiles. They'll then decide who they want to move forward. And we'll then facilitate a quick and easy process with them. We recommend 3 internal interviews maximum on the client side. This is
Yeah.
also how we drive down our time to hire with them. Uh, we organize these 3 interviews, hopefully within 2 weeks. All 3 interviews are completed, where we maintain communication with both our client and our candidates. Our clients are also able to see all the candidates in a portal that we have. We have a client portal. Uh,
Mhm.
though it's a lot very transparent process, very open process. Weekly meetings on Zoom. We're in constant communication with our clients and our candidates. And once it comes time for an offer for one of the candidates, usually it's 5 to 7 candidates required of interviews.
Mhm.
We then already know exactly what the candidates are looking for. We've already asked them those questions. We know if they're interviewing with other companies. We know their situation. We've gotten to know them very well, just as we have with our clients. And then we're able to act as the middleman to negotiate an offer that is a win-win for both the client and the candidate. Sometimes people think that in hiring, you have to just get it cheaper or squeeze the candidate for a lower wage. But realistically, if you're looking at retention and you want to bring the best people, you have to create a win-win situation. So it has to be a win for the candidate. They're happy with what they're getting paid. They're happy with the role and the title and the company. And same thing with the client. They're happy with the candidate. They're happy that that they're paying a fair wage that is competitive. That means that the candidate will stay.
Mhm.
And as much as I'm proud of the 39 days to hire, I think where we really shine is on our retention numbers. So with us, we have a 95% retention of our candidates for 1 year when we make a placement. And so that number, I think, is where the savings are met for our clients because they're getting someone that's going to stay, minimum of 1 year, maybe 2 or 3. And by having that retention is really huge. Most companies are averaging between 65% and 70% retention of staff. So if you have 100 employees, most years you probably lose around 30 of them, right? And so that's where if you have a higher retention rate, you're not having to hire so often. So
Mm.
it's huge savings with that. Any questions about our process?
It's I have actually a lot of questions John in here because uh of course hiring is it's a huge task, and I think one of the most fundamental and key um you know area or aspect of any organization, whether it's a team of 10 people, or it's a enterprise, or it's a huge company, multinational company, or whatever it is. Um, my first question I think that comes to my mind is, John, 2 weeks of interviews and 2 weeks of all the discussions, and then the clear, laying down the clear expectations on both the sides, like for the candidates, for the potential employees and the employer. um which area exactly takes the most of the time here, John? Like, in all these years you have worked with so many companies here, which area here takes the maximum time here?
I think the biggest part, well, I'd say the most important part is those first two meetings, is the discovery and alignment call,
Yeah.
and making sure that you're on the same page with the hiring team or the CEO. Unless you have a good start to the search, it'll just become worse and worse, the experience for everybody. We really got to be clear exactly what we're hiring for, and the way we approach it with the client is like, look, we're going to get your hire within 39 days. Are you sure about what hire you want? And in many cases, they're not really sure, right? We
Mm.
start the conversation, you find out, well, maybe we can be flexible on this, or maybe we need this. Or once you start talking to people, sometimes they change their minds about things. And so if you're able to remove a lot of that, let's say, later stage changes, and do all the hard conversations up front, this is where that the first 2 weeks of the search is crucial, because once you have alignment and you know exactly what you're looking for, finding it and getting that set up is not too hard for us. But I think the hardest part is the beginning of the search, and that's also the most time consuming, because a
Mm.
lot of times companies do not have all their ducks in a row before they're going to hire. They know they need someone, let's say in sales, but they don't really know the profile, or they don't know what the sales plan is going to be. They're trying to figure things out. And so this is where taking the time, sometimes having extra meetings with them to figure out exactly what the role is, and helping them with the job description is required. So it depends on the client, but I think the beginning is the most important, the most difficult, and the most time consuming, because for us, once you've done recruitment at our level for so long, getting in front of people, we've mastered that. We consider that sort of the easier part, because also another part that can be very difficult is the last minute negotiations. You're dealing with gainfully employed people, where you have sometimes counter offers from the existing company they are working at. So their boss doesn't want to let them go. And so they give them a counter offer against your offer. Then you have to negotiate with that. You may also have negotiations with the client about what kind of pay package you want to give, and can they afford it. So the beginning and the end, can be the very stressful parts, let's say, of the search. The middle part is probably the fun part. You get to talk to a lot of candidates. You get to interview them.
Yeah.
Look, you get to know all about them. It's the fun social part of it that you enjoy. But I think we often overlook the difficulty of final negotiations, the difficulty of making sure we're dealing with the bias from the hiring committee and the team, and also making sure that we know exactly what we're looking for. And unless you do a proper you know unless you address all of these things, it can become a nightmare for companies. And I think that's where we really, because of our experience, we can tell when there's issues, and we deal with them right away, you know.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And that absolutely makes sense, John, because I think the first step itself can be like a huge um shock, or oh my goodness, does that happen in a hiring industry? I don't think it happens. So I think, more than getting into that discovery phase and then doing the due diligence and everything, getting to the hang of the first two steps here. It's more about the awareness and the acceptance. As you very rightfully pointed out in the initial part of the conversation, that a bit of self awareness, because I don't think it's taken with that much of seriousness traditionally. I'm very sure now there are so many companies who are bringing up some innovative ways of hiring, good people who are right, fully fitting into the roles, the expectations, what the person can bring in from their experiences, from their talent, from their skills, and what company can contribute. I think it's on both the sides. But then I believe that the majority percentage, and this is not specific to any country or industry, it's still in that traditional hiring mindset that, just get a talent company or get a bunch of HR people to call, uh, go to portals, get some profiles, um, take help of the technology, and that's it. Call them, get the interviews done, and on end of the day, there is no considerable output here.
Yeah, no, for sure. I totally agree. You know, we often make mistakes and we're paying for them later, right? With a bad hire or not someone that's exactly right for the job, you know? So I think a thoughtful process takes time. It takes a lot of hard conversations and self-awareness too from everybody involved of like, okay, is there a specific type of person we keep hiring at our company? And I think that's something that comes up a lot. They think that because they found one person that did really well, then everyone should be the same as that person because, oh, that's the model, that's the mold, right? And sometimes having some diversity of thought is good. And just because people are a little different doesn't mean they can't do the job. So that's part of navigating biases that we all have. Um, and you can sort of sniff them out with proper conversations, you know?
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. And before we wrap up, one final question. John, do you or your team, do you get ever sometimes like this? There's a 39-day framework here or the approach here. And then sometimes, it can be very unpredictable. It may take a lot more time. Depends on case to case, depends on company to company, industry to industry, role to role. So, do you or your team, do you ever get overwhelmed that, oh my god, goodness, we have to close this within 39 days, or else it's going to be uh you know like a huge loss for us? Or do you take your considerable time and give a realistic expectation that, okay, maybe not 39 days, but at least maybe 5, or maybe a week more, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't want to give the false impression when we say average 39. There's some that go under, like our record is 8 days for a hire. Other roles take longer. We've had some last 2 months, right? So I think the whole idea is we have a project timeline. So, first week we want to do the discovery and alignment call. Then we want to have interviews within 2 weeks. Those are the guarantees we give them. And then from there, what it also depends on how engaged the client is. Sometimes we have clients that, like we had one client, for example, they took a month off and they went on vacation in the middle of a search, right? So we put the search on hold. When the search is on hold, it doesn't count towards our timeline because, well, it's on hold, right? So things like that can happen. Um, I think in general, though, it's just trying to stick to our process. We know it's a proven process that works. Trying to stick to our timelines, not overburdening anyone on our team with too many recruitments at once. If you're doing 5 roles, you have a lot of time to work on each one, right? So you're focused on the outcome. So um, obviously, in our business, stress is a big part of it, and being able to manage your stress is a key thing for any recruiter. How to mitigate your stress, exercise, those kind of things people do to reduce stress because, not only are we worried about the clients, we're worried about the candidates. We're worried about both and getting both to agree. So it's you get it from both sides, and it can be very stressful. So that's that's why recruitment's not for everybody. In many businesses, when you're making a sale, you just got to worry about the customer paying, and that's it. For us, we're worried about the candidate accepting the offer, the client paying, and so on. It's a two-stage sale, and so the stress level can be very high.
It can be, yeah, it can be. And I think that's exactly how it should be dealt with, because I know for the fact that you're coming from sales and then operations, uh, HR background, and yes, I mean the pressure can be very high, but then it shouldn't be inhuman, like a realistic expectation, and of course uh, being chaotic, but then it's kind of a structured chaos. I mean, there's no um unrealistic expectation here in terms of, okay, we have to get this done anyhow, somehow, and too many projects at the same time. So yeah, I think that's a kind of a calculated risk that we have to take. And with that, John, before we conclude, if our listeners, especially the founders or the business people or professionals, anyone who is listening to our conversation, I'm very sure they may have their own thoughts, opinions, experiences to share, and they would like to connect with you as well. What would be the best ways?
Yeah, so I mean, there's two ways to reach out to me. One is through our website, so readysetexec.com, one word. Or find me on LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn, look for John Pezoulas, and I'd love to connect. And for our recruitment, we recruit across North America. So if they're looking to either find a job or hire in the U.S. or Canada, feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. Listeners, there you go. You heard Sean, and as always, I'll make sure to have all the links mentioned in the show notes. So find them attached along with this episode on whichever platform you're listening to your BizBlend podcast to. And what I appreciate, listeners, about this conversation is that it doesn't blame candidates, technology, or trends, but it puts the focus back to where it belongs, on clarity, discipline, and leadership. And it's safe to say that hiring wrong isn't about bad luck, it's about bad assumptions. And hiring well isn't about being perfect, it's about being intentional. So, John, thank you so much. You really brought both the operator's lens and the human side into this topic. So, thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much. Have a good
Yeah. Yeah, and to all our listeners, if today's episode made you rethink how you hire, lead, or define roles, that's the point. Because the people you bring into your business don't just fill jobs, they shape your future. Until next time, this has been BizBlend. I'm your host, Sana, and I'll see you next time where business meets real conversation. Thank you.